Hey,
Good afternoon, Chitra ma'am. Chitra ma'am, am I audible to you?
Hello.
Good afternoon, Chitra ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Am I audible to
How are
you?
you? Yes.
Fine, ma'am.
Yeah.
Fine,
How are
fine.
you?
Fine, ma'am. Fine, fine, fine. Nice to see you.
Good.
We'll
Good to be
start.
here.
Yes, ma'am. Within 10 minutes, we'll start the session, ma'am.
Fair enough.
Jennifer, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Within 10 minutes, we'll start. Okay, ma'am. As soon as the live starts, we will start within 10 minutes.
Okay, ma'am. Sure, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you.
Priya, can we have a quick note, please?
Yes, ma'am.
So 2 to 2:45, I think we have the session,
Yes,
and
ma'am.
then we can look at any questions. And then depending on when that gets over, we can immediately move to the paper
Move to the
presentations.
yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We start. Within 5 minutes, we'll start, ma'am. I'm
No
just
problem.
waiting for our principal, ma'am. We'll start within 5 minutes.
Yes.
Indra ma'am, good afternoon, ma'am. Indra ma'am. Indra ma'am. Am I audible to you, ma'am? Indra ma'am. Indra ma'am. Indra ma'am.
Indra ma'am, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
Good afternoon, ma'am. Good afternoon, ma'am. Shall we start, ma'am?
yeah.
Yeah, ma'am gave the approval. We'll start, ma'am. Sarah ma'am also gave. Okay. Jennifer ma'am, you can
Good
start.
afternoon, ma'am. Shall I?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. You can.
Okay. Good afternoon. Welcome, everyone, Thank you for joining with us for today's webinar. I'm Jennifer, Assistant Professor of Physical Science, St. Ignatius College of Education. St. Ignatius College of Education, Palankotai, in association with Seshai Papers and Boards Limited, Unit Tirunelveli, organizes international webinar on emerging trends in educational research. And we are on the cloud 9 because this is the second session of today's international webinar. Today we will be discussing qualitative research using grounded theory and featuring Dr. Chitra Dey, Assistant Professor, VIT Business School, Chennai for OB, HRM and Analytics. Now, it's time for welcoming her. True hospitality is welcoming the stranger on her own terms. This kind of hospitality can only be offered by those who have found the center of their lives in their own hearts. Just like these words, I'm happy to call upon our IQAC coordinator, Dr. Indra Mary Eril Salvi, Assistant Professor of Psychology, to deliver welcome address and to introduce the resource person. Indra ma'am.
Thank you, Jennifer. Every good gift and every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights. Give, and let it be given to you. A very warm, pleasant, and convivial welcome to the virtual gathering today. Good afternoon, dear all. I'm happy to be a part of the international webinar on emerging trends in educational research organized by our esteemed institution, St. Ignatius College of Education, Palankotai, in association with Seshai Paper and Board Limited, Tirunelveli. This session on qualitative research using grounded theory is a blessed opportunity to hear from our gorgeous Dr. Chitra Dey, Assistant Professor, VIT Business School, Chennai. With deep sentiments of gratitude and joy, I welcome the great minds who had made this day a possibility. I am happy to acknowledge the presence and welcome our dear educational counselor, Dr. L. Vasanthi Medona, who is a person of few words and great deeds. Welcome, sister. With fond memory of our former secretary, Reverend Sister A. Magdalene Terrace, I'm immensely happy and excited to welcome our beloved secretary, Reverend Sister A. Gemma, who is to this webinar. Your prayers and blessings are indeed very precious to us. Welcome, sister. The mastermind of this webinar is our dear principal, Dr. M. Maria Saroja, Research Director and Associate Professor of Biological Science. Welcome, dear ma'am. We welcome you with tons of thanks for your guidance. At this auspicious moment, I extend a friendly welcome to Dr. S. Arogyasamy, Chief Manager, Seshai Paper and Boards Limited, Unit Tirunelveli, for his extensive support in the conduction of this international webinar. This day is made by the gracious acceptance and presence of our ebullient and energy-packed resource person, Dr. Chitra Dey, Assistant Professor, Vellore Institute of Technology and Business School, Chennai, for Organizational Behavior, Human Resource Management, and Analytics. In spite of her expertise, she is a simple, approachable, and down-to-earth person. She is an ever-smiling expert in the fields of organizational behavior, human resource management, and analytics. She is passionate about understanding how people work together as team and what creates synergy in teams. Her main research area include teamwork, global virtual teams, and training people to work in teams. As we know, these are the factors needed for this contemporary corporate world to survive and to excel. In addition to these, Dr. Chitra Dey is also interested in areas like remote working, women entrepreneurship, and using analytics for solving business problems. She has conducted training in research methodology and design thinking. She is a proud holder of doctoral degree in management from IIT Madras and an MBA in HR from BIM Tiruchi. We are proud to have with us such an astonishing and extraordinary resource person for this session. With extended love, we welcome you, ma'am, to this meet. Welcome, ma'am. I'm elated to welcome our impressive Dean of Studies, Dr. E.Z. Punitha, a formidable controller of examinations, Dr. Tharasta Shanti, our admirable Vice Principal, Dr. A. Jayasuda, our eminent MEd coordinator, Dr. J. Maria Prema, our active Director of Physical Education, Dr. Josephine, and knowledgeable librarian, Dr. John C. Rose. Welcome, dear members of the staff. You are the steering wheel of this day. I heartily welcome every member of our staff, both teaching and non-teaching, for their amiable and cooperative work and technical support. I would like to have a special mention for the organizing secretaries of this webinar, Mrs. Michael Jaipriya, Assistant Professor of Biological Science, and Mrs. Jennifer, Assistant Professor of Physical Science. We are very happy and ever thankful for the presence of all the delegates and participants of the webinar from various other institutions, universities, states, and countries. Your praiseworthy presence is admirable. Welcome, respected all. My genial welcome to all the prospective teachers, scholars, and eminent professionals for glorifying these sessions with your presence in this Zoom online and also through YouTube live streaming. Welcome. Eager to hear from Dr. Chitra De, I have to conclude my words of welcome, though I missed to mention everyone by your name. We adore and acclaim you. Welcome, welcome one and all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for your warm welcoming words and for the intellectual introduction. Thank you so much. So, it's my pleasure and prestige for me to welcome Dr. Chitra De, our gorgeous resource person. Thank you so much, ma'am. The session is yours.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Dr. Indra Mary, thank you so much for such kind words. I think that one thing which I keep in mind about St. Ignatius College, the last time that I had come here itself, is the entire management, when they talk to somebody from outside, is always so warm, welcoming, and cheerful. And they have such kind words to say about the others. So thank you so much. Thank you for the kind words. I'm very happy to be here to take the second session in part of the emerging trends in educational research, such an apt and important topic which needs to be covered in educational institutions today. In fact, before I start, I would like to thank Reverend Senior Dr. L. Vasanthi Madonna, who is the Educational Counselor for the ICM district team, Reverend Senior A. Gemma, who is the Secretary, and Dr. M. Maria Saroja, who is the Principal of the college, for being the leaders and setting the vision for running a program like this. I also would like to thank and acknowledge Dr. S. Arokesamy, who is the Chief Manager of Shesha Sai Paper and Boards Limited, the unit in Tirunelveli, for supporting the college in its initiatives. It is leaders like you who show us the way forward, especially India on the crux of taking up the top position in education in the world, I would say. We need leaders like this to encourage networking, encourage sharing of information. Thank you once again. Also, thanks to Dr. Indra Mary. Thank you so much for the beautiful welcoming words. And my sincere thanks also to Michael, Jaipriya, and Jennifer. Priya has always been a good coordinator, always on call and telling me all the things I need to know. And Dr. Maria Saroja was also very kind and sweet to call me and invite me to the webinar. Welcome to also the distinguished members and faculty of St. Ignatius College. And finally, last but not least, welcome to the members who are presenting today. I should say distinguished members. I was very happy to see a very strong panel of presenters today in the session from 3 to 4. I am very eagerly looking forward to the presentations that they will be making. So let me start off with the presentation today, my topic. Jennifer, ma'am, are you able to see my screen?
Yes, ma'am,
Yes,
it's
ma'am,
visible.
it is visible. Yes.
Thank you. So, today's discussion topic is on qualitative research using grounded theory. And in fact, when Priya called me to have a discussion about what kind of topics we should have, we looked at a various range of topics, and then finally we decided on taking up qualitative research, primarily because of the changing trend in how people conduct research and what kind of research is being accepted for publication today, and also because India is taking the lead in doing research in today's world, right? So, three main things. One is the shift in the way people are doing research. It's not enough to do one survey and then say that you want to do a publication. People are just not willing to. Willing to look at a publication which has only. People are not willing to look at papers which are having only one cross-sectional survey in it. And most importantly, the last point which I said, because India is taking the lead in research. This is a point which I would like to take a minute to stress, because qualitative research is known for major theory building. When you talk about theory building, it cannot happen to that extent using quantitative research, and you need qualitative research people to be able to build theory for the Indian context. It is therefore in this background that we decided on the topic of qualitative research using grounded theory. So what is the agenda for the day? The agenda for the day is to give you a very short introduction to qualitative research using grounded theory. I start off by giving an explanation about what is qualitative research, what is grounded theory, and then I do not want to talk about any particular method, how to do a particular method, but instead I wanted to give you an access to an entire methodology which starts from the moment you collect data all the way till you go to the publication. So I chose to talk about GOER method. GOER method is grounded in grounded theory. It's a part of qualitative research, and it helps us in structuring our work. It helps in analyzing the data and presenting the data in such a way that it is ready for publication. The last part of the talk today will be questions. Now, the introduction to this session starts with what is the role of theory. So when we talk about theory, what we expect it to do is to help us predict and explain human behavior. So when we see people behave in a particular way, what is the reason why people are behaving like that? If we know the characteristics of the situation, can we predict the behavior of the people, right? So it is not only important to be able to understand behavior, but we should be able to use it in practical applications. For example, if you are designing something for the organization, if you are in the government making government policy, then you need to have theoretical backing for the policy changes you're making, for the incentives that you're bringing, for the HR policies that you're implementing. That is the contribution which theory gives. Now, apart from the practical application, theory should also be useful in advancing and also guiding research in the future. So these are the expectations which we have of theory. These expectations were set out by Glaser and Strauss in their 1967 book, and they still hold fresh today. So if this is the roles of theory, what is the focus of what is the focus of the empirical papers with which we as research scholars and faculty are always in touch, right? So what is the connection between theory that is guiding, helping us predict behavior, helping us devise practical applications? What is the connection between that theory and the empirical papers which we come up with? The empirical papers which we make help us develop new theories and also to test old theories. This suggestion was given by Colquitt and Zapata Fellan in their very acclaimed paper in the Academy of Management Journal in 2007. They talk about what should empirical papers aim at, either to develop a new theory about a phenomena which people had so far not looked, or if there is a theory which has been proposed some time back, we test it to validate it. So this is the role of theory and the objectives of the empirical papers which we write. So when we talk about empirical papers, there are two main approaches to writing them. One is the quantitative approach and the other is the qualitative approach. Mainly in India, scholars look at quantitative research. Now, there's nothing wrong with quantitative research. It's very, very essential for verification of theory or the development of theory through logical deduction. But primarily, the focus is on verification of already existing theories. But the problem with quantitative research, particularly the survey-based research that we so emphasize, is that it cannot capture human actions. Say, for example, you are making a questionnaire, and in the questionnaire, one of the options that you've given is, I don't know, or neutral, right? What is going on in the mind of the person who is ticking that I don't know? How will you, as a researcher, interpret that particular answer? Does it mean that he doesn't know what the topic is? Does it mean that the respondent did not know whether it applies to him? Or could it be that it applies to him, but he's not aware of it? What is the meaning? So quantitative research, while very useful, is not able to capture human actions. And like I said, mainly used for verification of existing theories. So if you are in a situation where you want to develop new theory, you have an interesting phenomena happening, and you're like, what theory can explain what is happening? For the development of that theory, you need to have the experimental data, and you have to develop the theory from that data itself. So this is called as qualitative research. Qualitative research is also very helpful in giving us insights into the context in which the research is happening. So going forward, we need to have qualitative research to not only help us build new theory, but also to give us interesting insights about the context in which it is happening. So let me be a little more clear here. Most of the research, the quantitative research, is based on theories which are developed in Western countries. So if you're applying that theory to the Indian context, then you definitely need to give more explanation about how this theory is actually unfolding in our country, right? So that is where that is what I mean when I say qualitative research helps us in generating more insight into the context. Now, so why qualitative research? I would like to stress again, qualitative research will help provide depth and depth of understanding about a particular phenomena, and it helps us describe the phenomena with anecdotes. Now, when can we use qualitative research? We can use qualitative research when there is a very complex, when we are required to have a complex and detailed understanding of a particular issue. For example, behavior of children in the classroom. Will all classrooms all over the world be same? No, there will definitely be the influence of the culture that seeps into the classroom. So a theory which is developed in the US or in the UK, while it's useful in explaining general behavior, will not help us understand complex and detailed aspects of the behavior of children in a classroom. So this is an example of a situation where the context of the participants is warranted. The social situation of children in India is very different from social situation of children abroad. They live in a whole completely different environment. Environment abroad is different from the environment in India. So if you want to bring in the context, then you can use qualitative research. Two more reasons why you may want to shift from quantitative to qualitative. One is the follow-up mechanism, right? So you do a quantitative research, and when you do a quantitative research, the results that you got are contrary to your expectations. You thought that there's going to be a positive relationship between two variables, but when you got the result, you have got a negative relationship or you got no relationship. So don't doubt your data. At that state, do not doubt your data. Your data must be telling you something. In this situation, turn to qualitative research to ask questions. Why have I got this result? So post hoc studies, right? Post hoc studies which tell us, which help us understand why we got results contrary to expectations can also happen. That's here. Then lack of fit between quantitative measures and the problem that we are examining. So you are examining a particular phenomena. You find that there is a standardized scale which has been developed in Australia or Germany, but then you are not sure whether the items in that particular scale can be used here in India, right? So there's a lack of fit between the quantitative measures that are existing and what we see here. In this case also, you may want to go for a qualitative research. So what are the characteristics of qualitative research? The characteristics of qualitative research: the researchers must convey ideas about their background to the people who are going to read their research. The research is situated in the context. It is not separate from the context. Take any of the qualitative research. There is a certain level of immersion meaning involvement of the researcher in the research itself. Take ethnographic studies. You cannot do ethnographic studies by being away and separate from your observant population. You need to be with them. You need to experience them to be able to do ethnographic studies. The research process has to be disclosed completely. If you're writing a paper and you're submitting it to a journal, you have to give step-by-step instructions, step-by-step detailing of how the qualitative research was conducted. Funnels of perception should be kept as open as possible. Go with an open mind. In fact, when we look at grounded theory today, it talks about going into the field with as open a mind as possible. Another important thing which you need to do when you are doing qualitative research is to get perspectives from multiple angles. It's not enough to get data from one particular source because it may not validate your assumptions. And finally, the research process is emergent. Highlighting again the theory building aspect. That is, you're not testing a theory that's already there. You are going with the flow of the research to see what is emerging. You are not going into research thinking this is what has to happen. No, you're going with an open mind and saying, I want to see what is there, and I'm accepting whatever is coming, and I'm going to build theory based on what I see. Now, there are different kinds of qualitative research, right? There can be ethnography, phenomenology, grounded theory, case studies, narrative methods, historical methods. So these are all different types of qualitative research. This methodology is usually based on the research question that you have. So if your research question, so based on your research question, you have to take up one of these different methods for qualitative research. Out of this, in today's session, I will be highlighting and talking to you about grounded theory, which is the third one. Let's see what that is. So grounded theory was for the first time mentioned by Barney Glaser and Anselm Strauss in their book, Discovery of Grounded Theory in 1967. So essentially, Glaser and Strauss said that grounded theory means that you discover theory from data. So their main question was, if I have data and if I analyze it and if I come to certain conclusions, how do I know, or how do I convince the people who are reading my paper that the conclusions that I've come to have come from the people who have given me that data, right? How does it remain true to the data that I've got? How can I make sure that it's not my own imagination which is coming out as theory? So that's why they came up with the idea of grounded theory. Here they talk about splitting up the population into different groups of objects, and you keep comparing between them. Now, one interesting thing is Glaser and Strauss proposed grounded theory primarily for usage in the area of sociology. That's why you see here the reference to groups. The reference to groups is primarily because the theory was, the methodology was primarily meant for sociology. That's why they have groups. But today, grounded theory is used in many different fields in management and social sciences. But primarily, the idea is to have groups of objects, and you look at differences between these objects to build theory. Now, the idea is to look at data to understand the patterns underlying the data. We will see what is the meaning of patterns underlying the data as we go forward. Now, you might ask, okay, so grounded theory is a part of qualitative research. Good. What is the advantage of using it? Now, like I said, Glaser and Strauss were also having the same doubt that you are having. That is, if I have the data, how do I draw the connection from data to my theory? How can I convince people who are reading my paper that my theory is based on the data that they have, right? So the primary aim of grounded theory is to tie the theory to the data and thus make it irrefutable. Nobody can say that the theory came from Chitra's imagination. No, it came from the data that we collected. Now, you might be familiar with the researchers who use quantitative methods. So what will they do? They collect a survey, and then they will say, okay, what theory will fit into this survey data? And then based on this analysis, after the data has been collected, they try to squeeze a theory into the data, right? So using grounded theory reduces opportunities of doing things like this. That is, in grounded theory, you get the data and then you build the theory. unlike in the other situation where you get the data and then you squeeze a theory into it, right? It also avoids finding examples to fit any theory. So you have learned, say, social identity theory, and then you'll say, okay, where can I look around to find data which will fit into this theory? So these two kind of things, while it might give you a publication, is generally not advancing science. It's generally not advancing theory. So hence the emphasis on grounded theory. Now, now what are the elements of grounded theory? There, the grounded theory is actually a cycle wherein you collect data. From the data, you come up with concepts, group the concepts into categories, identify the relationships between categories, and then you refine what kind of data you collect in a comparative cycle. So what are the elements of grounded theory? There are two elements of grounded theory. One is the conceptual categories and the properties of these categories. And the second one is the hypothesis or the relationships between the categories. One moment, please excuse me. Yes. So, like I said, there are two elements of grounded theory. One is the categories and the properties of these categories. And the second one, the hypothesis or the relationships between these categories. So what we need to do as we go forward, and as I explain step by step, I will give more insight into what are these conceptual categories which I'm referring to here, and what are the generalized relationships which I'm referring to here. But essentially, these are the steps. That is, you collect the data, you break down the data and you understand what are the concepts. You bring together similar concepts to form categories, look at what are the relationships between categories, and then you go for the next round of discussions with your respondents based on the findings that you've had. So what happens when you do like this is that you let the categories emerge from the study. One moment. You let the categories emerge from the study rather than having pre-existing categories. So this is the positive point here. You're not going for one round of data collection and then finalizing your study. No, you go for multiple rounds, and in each round you refine the findings, and that influences the next round of data collection that you do. Now, the GOER method is a method which is proposed by Corley and GOER, in which they give out the steps for conducting data analysis using grounded theory. So the intention of the GOER method was to help researchers. What it does is that it brings in a certain conceptual and analytical discipline into the process, which helps us interpret the data in such a way that we can convince the readers and convince ourselves also that the conclusions that we are getting from the data are plausible and defensible. So this is the most important aspect of GOER method. There are two very important assumptions on which the GOER method is based. One is the social construction of reality. That is, we can knowledgeably understand the reality in which we are living, and informants as knowledgeable agents. That is, if you're collecting information from a respondent, that person is knowledgeable enough to give you information. Say, for example, you are looking at teaching methods in a kindergarten class, right? Going to a 4-year-old and asking the child, so how was the class? Did you enjoy the class? Can you tell us something about the method used to teach you ABC? That will definitely not help, right? Because the informants, the cute little 4-year-old is not a knowledgeable agent who can tell you about the experiences that they've had. So very important, these assumptions are important. One, we should be able to have a social construction of the reality, and our informants should be knowledgeable people who can give us information about the phenomena. So where can you use this GOER method? You can use it in case studies. You can use it in process methods, process models where multiple steps are involved. You can use it in situations which focus on concepts, and you can also use it on situations where informants interpretation is important. One moment. Okay, they're muted. So GOER method is not the only method for doing grounded theory. And I'm not making a statement that it is the most best method or anything like that. It is one of the methods which are available for doing grounded theory. I have picked it up because it streamlines the entire process of data analysis as well as writing of the paper in a way which is easy to manage. What are the advantages of using the GOER method? Well, for one, like I said, it forces a disciplined approach to evidence, right? You build the theory from the evidence that you've collected. It helps finding patterns in interview data. It's very useful when you are having the data which you've collected from respondents in the form of interviews. And it allows to build the model from scratch. This is important because primarily when we are talking about theory building, following a methodology like this will actually help us in doing that. And then, like I said, it helps structure your entire data analysis and paper writing. It helps you build data structure, the data table, and also in the findings. Now, what are the steps in the GOER methodology? The steps in the GOER methodology, first step is to establish the timeline of events which occurred. Then the open coding of the data that you have collected, creating a data table to substantiate the coding, building the grounded model from the data that you've collected, writing the finding sections and the discussion sessions. So if you look at this is where you start collecting the data. This is where you start collecting the data. Once you've collected the data and established a timeline, then you move to open coding. Then once you have created the data structure, you make the data table, and you move to the grounded model. And then finally, when you write the finding section and the discussion session. So these are the steps. So let's look at the first step. The first step is the step of establishing the sequence of events. So I have taken all this data from Corley and GOER from their paper published in 2004. It talks about identity, ambiguity, and change in the wake of a corporate spin-off. So when they collected data and when they presented the paper, they gave the timeline of the entire event, right? From the moment the management announced the intention to publish an IPO, to the actual IPO, the spin-off announcements, and where did the researchers enter the picture? The researchers entered the picture here and collected data during this period. In fact, many Indian researchers, when they write their papers, do not talk about this. In fact, I think that is one of the reasons why there is a certain feeling that the data that we give is not that reliable. But that is because we do not tell the story behind how the data was collected, what was the context in which data was collected, and what are the methods were followed to collect the data, analyze it, and so on, right? So very important, especially in a qualitative study, this is an important thing in a qualitative study, which is to give step by step the entire process that was followed to do the research. Once you have your data transcribed, then the next step is the coding. That is, you start with open coding. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, you can.
Yeah. So once you have the data transcribed, and then you can start the coding. You go on with start with open coding, then move to axial coding, and finally selective coding. So let's see what are there in each of these steps. Open coding is where you take the transcripts, these long transcripts, and you start breaking it into small pieces, right? Like you can't eat an entire cake, right? It's difficult to stuff an entire cake into the mouth. So you cut it into small slices and you see what each slice is about. So identify the concepts of interest in the data. So we are breaking it into discrete parts and then we code each part. What is each part of this referring to? Can we give it a label? That is the coding. Next comes the axial coding, which is the organization of the codes. What we're trying to do is look at relationship between codes. If these codes are related to each other, then we bring it under one theme, right? So that is axial coding. Finally, once the axial coding is done, that is, once we have created the categories, then we go into selective coding. That is, we are looking for one entire overarching core theme to bring together all these concepts under one umbrella. So we start off with the data, split it into small parts, which is open coding. Then we assign labels to it, that's also open coding. We see which of these first order codes belong together to form categories, that is axial coding. And in the last step, we bring all of that together under one core theme through selective coding. So these are the steps in coding. Now, let me explain open coding a little bit more. Say you have interview data. So this is the data which was published by Trembath, David, and Valandin. There are some more authors in the year 2009. In that, they have some interview data. And in the interview data, there are different respondents, Luke, Carl, Emma, and all, they have all said different things. So we are taking the data and splitting it into small parts. And then you're saying, okay, what does this mean? I feel I have some gifts to share. So you can code it by saying that Luke wants to apply the knowledge and skills that he has with other people. Carl says, if I can help one person, I am happy. So the intention, so the coding is that this act brings happiness, helping and bringing happiness is what Carl intends to do, right? So what is happening here? Here we have the actual data. This is the interview data that we collected from our respondents. We have broken the data into small bits of conversations and we are coding that conversation so that you can understand what each of these people are talking about. For example, when Emma says, I love teaching people about CP, what she's referring to is about educating others. So this is analyzing So this is the first step of open coding. The idea is to analyze the data. Please understand that this is not done in one shot. It's done over multiple revisions. You have to do it again and again to get it right. I'm sorry, I'm having slight throat problem, so I just take a small break. Yes. From open coding, from when the coding is done, the output of the coding that you get is the output of the coding, right? The output of this entire process is something like this. This goes into the paper that you eventually write and submit to the journal paper. So the codes that we generated here through open coding, the code that is given here, that is the code that's given here as the first order code. So what are we doing here? All the first order codes are brought together to form second order codes, and then the second order codes are aggregated to form themes. So very important thing is that each bit of data should go only into one code. One code should go only into one second order concept. Multiple second order concepts can come to form an aggregate theme. For example, in this particular slide, you can see that objectives, other orientation, understanding emotional dynamics, inducing cooperation. This is social skills and this is orientation. Both of this come together to form disposition to mediate. So you have the data is coded. The first order codes give you second order codes, and the second order codes give you the aggregate theme. This figure actually goes into the paper that you write. Now, even though we did this, we will not be presenting this coding in our paper. So then how do we present the proof to the editors of the journal that this data structure is actually correct? How can we say that? That is done through the data table. The data table is a place where you take the actual quotations from the data, all these things, you take the actual quotations from the data and tie it to the second order themes. So this is also an important part of your paper. It is, you have to read the text very carefully to come up with this, and you have to do this multiple times to get this right. Once this is done, once your second order themes are ready, then you are ready to make your grounded model. So you get together all the second order concepts, look at the relationship between them to build the model. For example, in this research which Corley and Georgia wrote, they want to address the question, how does organizational identity change? Is there a process through which that happens? So from their interview data, they are actually coming up with a model about how the whole process happens. In the next session, you will write about the findings. So here we are writing an informative story which highlights what are the concepts that we found in the data. For example, here they are talking about identity ambiguity, sense-giving imperative. So each of these second order categories which they have identified, they are going deep into it to understand what is the meaning. There might already be pre-existing theories about the entire process, but there may not be papers which address each of these things. So in our paper, we try to look at what these are, right? I mean, not this particular variable, I'm saying in the research, second order themes, we will go very deeply. That's why I have put here a magnifying glass, because the findings section is for you to very clearly and deeply explain each of the second order themes that you have found. So to give more weightage to the second order themes, you can also add quotes into the findings session. But the primary aim of this entire thing is to make a very strong connection between data to theory. This is the last section, which is the discussion session. Here, what we do is we say, okay, so we have found these concepts. These are the new concepts which we found in our research. How do they tie up with the old concepts? What is so new about the concepts? What is the transferability of these concepts to other contexts? And if you have doubts about how it can be transferred, then you will need to suggest a roadmap for future research, right? So connect the concept with old concepts, examine what is new about it, and then for the future, give directions for other researchers to come. Okay, Chitra, so all of us will start grounded theory? No, that is not the idea. There are disadvantages in GeoVia method as well. What are the disadvantages? It overlooks variance among informants, and that's a very important aspect. The method is meant for us to find similarities, not look at differences. So if there is a considerable difference among the members in your subset, then you may want to rethink the idea about using GeoGea method. Two important things. You have to be very careful when you interview and collect data. Some people, when asked about their experiences, focus only on certain aspects and therefore do not tell you the whole range of experiences they have. So just because somebody mentions only one aspect of it does not mean that there are no other aspects. That's one thing. Second, people may also be lying to you. How do you find that out? You have to talk to many people to find out what is the truth, right? So just because somebody says something doesn't mean that it is so. So these are some of the most important disadvantages. So another thing is that it focuses on the model rather than the narrative. And sometimes people accuse it of focusing on producing a paper rather than explaining a phenomenon. So some of the methods and tools of grounded theory, the methods which you can use in grounded theory are interviews, surveys, and observation method. Some of the tools which you can use for coding, MaxQDA, Atlas.ti, and NVivo. Otter.ai is a very useful website in which you can enter data which is in the video form or the content form, and you get transcripts. So it's very easy. You don't have to like listen and write down or anything. Just record the video, upload it, and you will get the results. And that's about it. So thank you for taking the time to join me in this seminar today. I am open to questions now.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and time through this visual presentation of the qualitative research and the types of grounded theory and geo method. Thank you so much for that. Dear participants.
You're welcome.
My pleasure, ma'am. Dear participants, if you have any questions, post your questions in the chat box. Dear participants, if you have any questions, post your questions in the chat box.
I would also like to take a minute to say that my professor, my advisor from IIT Madras, Dr. M.P. Ganesh, he is doing, he sends his regards, by the way. He's doing research on educators and teachers. He's collecting information from teachers and principals. So he had a small request to float his questionnaire among the participants today. Priya, with your permission, can I float that among the participants?
Yes, ma'am. You can post it in the chat box, ma'am.
Yes.
We are
Thank
happy
you.
for it, ma'am. Thanks to Ganesh sir also. Thank you.
So I request all the participants who are in the education sector to kindly fill up this form. This is about mentoring, which is an important aspect of growth in educational institutions. We really would like if you can fill it up for us. Thank you for your time there. I think I digress a little bit. Any questions about this presentation that I gave? I am open to them now.
Jennifer, ma'am, you can go ahead. I think so. Still, they have not posted questions, so we don't want to. Please unmute yourself and go ahead, ma'am. Jennifer, ma'am, please unmute yourself. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. You can go ahead, ma'am. Since there is no intimation in the chat box, since the time is moving out, we can move on to the next thing.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay,
Sure, ma'am.
thank you.
It's time to thank all our friends to make this webinar a grand success. Now I call upon Mrs. C. Vanilla Shantarudy, SM Professor of English, to deliver a vote of thanks.
Yes, good evening to all. The best and beautiful things in the world cannot be seen or even touched. They must be felt by heart. Thank you is one such word among them. I consider it a great privilege to propose a vote of thanks to all the dignitaries who have witnessed it in a memorable and successful event. On this valuable day, I bow before the omnipotent Lord and thank him profusely for the countless graces and blessings he has bestowed on us. Today, my words are not enough to express the gratitude. On behalf of our college, I accord my special and sincere thanks to our resource person, Dr. Chitra De, Assistant Professor, Vellore Institute of Technology, Business, School of Chennai for Organizational Behavior. We are extremely impressed by your provoking input about quality research using ground theory and the enlightenment you gave by inspiring each and everyone here is incredible and priceless. You have guided us in the right direction of research using grounded theory and how the GIR method helps the researchers. I'm sure that all the participants have been benefited by attending this webinar. Thank you so much, ma'am. And then I owe a heartfelt and grateful thanks to our right-hand supporter and holistic picture of a dynamic personality, Reverend Sister Dr. L. Vasanthi Medona, ICM, Educational Counselor, team. Thank you very much, Sister, for being with us today. Thank you, Sister. Now I register my profuse thanks to our respected secretary, Reverend Sister Ejama, ICM, for giving an excellent support towards organizing this event. Thank you, Sister. An event of this dimensions cannot happen overnight and needs meticulous planning, execution, and eye for detail. I take this opportunity to extend our most sincere thanks to our beloved principal, Dr. Maria Saroja, convener of this international webinar, for her minute-to-minute guidance and support and for providing encouragement at every point of time, and we much obliged to you to organize this interview.
Vendla ma'am, you are in the mute. Can you unmute yourself? You are in the mute, ma'am. Can you unmute yourself?
Yes. This event is a collaborative effort, a joint venture with Sesha Shai Paper and Board Limited. Honestly, I express my thanks to Dr. N. Arokisami, Chief Manager, Seshashayi Paper Board Limited, Tirunelveli District. I may like to express my sincere thanks to our galaxy of intellectuals, Dr. E.C. Punita, Dean of our college, Dr. Tarasita Shanti, Controller of Examinations, Dr. Indra Mary LHD, IQAC Coordinator, Dr. J. Sudha, Vice Principal, and all the teaching and non-teaching faculties. This event would not have been successful without the organizing committee. Thank you so much, Organizing Secretary Mrs. Michael Jayapriya and Mrs. Debashila Jennifer, for your efforts making this event successful. I am thankful to all the participants from various institutions joined with us through virtual platform. Thank you all once again, and thank you all for making this day successful with your contribution. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vanilla ma'am. Thank you. And now it's time for presenting the presentation. Ma'am, shall we move to the presentation session?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Jennifer, ma'am. Thank you, Vanilla, ma'am. And thank you all for those who have been in the second session. Thank you for your MC, Jennifer, ma'am. Thank you for your support also. So now we are moving to the presentation session. The presenters, you can get ready. So ma'am is ready to chair the session. So as I call name, you can present your screen. I'll allow you to share your screen. So the first paper presenter will be Nandini Mishra, Assistant Professor in Philosophy from Qatar, on the title of Relevance of Current Technology and Educational Research. Nandini
Priya,
Mishra, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Would you mention the rules of presentation and
Yeah, ma'am.
the timekeeping?
Yes, ma'am. So Nandini Mishra, ma'am. Nandini, ma'am, are you there in the line? So dear paper presenters, the time limit for the paper presentation will be 5 to 7 minutes. Within that, you have to present your concept. And after that, any queries regarding your presentation, discussion will be there. Ma'am will ask raise question. And you can end up the session presentation within 7 minutes. And your presentation will be validated. And the best paper presentation will be awarded with the certificates also. So get ready for presentation. Nandini ma'am, Nandini Mishra ma'am.
Ma'am, she's in the meet, but she's not a unmute person.
Yes, ma'am.
If
Yes,
they are
ma'am.
not in the line, you call other person to present.
Ma'am, she is in the meet only, ma'am.
Okay. Then okay.
Ma'am is in the meet only. Nandini ma'am. Okay. Okay, ma'am. I'll move to the next person till let Nandini ma'am comes to the line. Till that, we'll move to the next person. The second participant will be Parasuraman sir, Dr. D. Parasuram, Principal JSS Street.
Yes.
Yes, sir. College of Education, Vijayagiri, Karnataka, on the topic on data analysis softwares for quantitative and qualitative research. Sir, you can present your screen, sir. Parasuram, sir, you can present your screen.
Shall I?
Sir, you can start. Your time starts.
Share
now,
my
sir. You can share.
PT, madam.
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Am I audible to you, sir? You can present your PPT, sir.
Yeah, ma'am, whether you want to make him as a host or anything else to share the presentation.
I'll ask Venison, sir. Just a minute, ma'am. I'll ask Venison, sir.
Because
since we are also co-host, we can't make him to be a co-host, and
yes.
I'll ask him.
Parasuram sir, you're not audible. Please check your net connection, whether it is stable or not.
Bala, sir, get ready for the next presentation, sir. Bala, sir.
Priya, ma'am, shall we proceed?
Yes, madam.
Can you present now?
Madam, I have sent you the PPT and whether I have to present or you.
You present. It's better you present, sir.
Okay.
Madam, Dr. Parshuram is ready, madam.
Okay, sir. You can. Okay, sir. Parasuram, sir, you can start your presentation, sir.
Yes, madam. Madam, shall I share my PPT?
Sure, sure, sir. You can share your screen.
No, you can make me host, madam. I will share it.
Just a second, sir. Sir. Sir, you can present now.
Yes, madam.
Dear participants, 5 minutes only. You can present your screen.
Madam, PPT is visible, madam.
Yes, sir. It's visible, sir.
Yes.
You can start, sir. Ma'am?
Yes.
We're starting the presentation now. Yes.
Okay, very good afternoon to everyone. I'm Dr. Parshuram D, Principal JSS Sri Manjunatheshwara College of Education, Vidyagiri, Dharwad. Okay, 1 second, madam. Just it has gone back, the PPT.
It's visible, sir.
Yes, madam. No. I will start from first page, madam. Okay, fine. Very good afternoon to everyone. I'm Dr. Parshuram D, Principal, JSS Sri Manjunatheshwara College of Education, Vidyagiri, Dharwad. Now I'm going to presenting my paper, Data Analysis, Software for Qualitative and Quantitative Research. Okay, my topic is related to research and also trends which are happening in education field. As we know, research is a scientific process. It follows the systematic step in which we are going to collecting the data